Welcome to another ASMR gaming session. Today I'll be taking a closer look at Last Epoch, an action RPG that's currently available in early access on Steam. I've played this game long enough to take a character all the way to endgame, and in this video I'll be sharing my impressions with you. Instead of just focusing on the gameplay, I'll be giving you a comprehensive overview of Last Epoch. I'll describe the game mechanics and characteristics, and I'll also share my opinion on what makes this game stand out. So sit back, relax, and let's explore Last Epoch together. Let's start by diving into the story. Now, in action RPGs, the story often takes a backseat to the gameplay. Sometimes it's just an excuse to go around and kill monsters to get loot, but having a compelling world to immerse yourself in can make all the difference. Last Epoch takes place in the world of Ithera, a land of gods and empires that is on the brink of destruction. The game's unique twist is that you don't just experience one era of this world, but you can actually travel through time to different periods to fix the timeline and prevent the void from consuming everything. As you progress through the main campaign, you'll visit 4 different eras. The Ancient Era, before the gods appeared, a sort of prehistoric world. A Divine Era, dominated by the sun god Raya. The Imperial Era, where the undead army reigns supreme under the guidance of the immortal Emperor. And the Ruined Era, where the void is consuming everything. The story of Last Epoch is definitely unusual and intriguing, although the time travel aspect can be a bit confusing at times. But then again, that's all part of the fun, right? Personally, I admit I found myself more interested in the game mechanics and the general game loop than the story itself, but the lore depth and time travel paradoxes make for an engaging setting beyond just the gameplay itself. One of the benefits of having different eras is that the developers can reimagine the same areas in different ways, which adds a lot of visual variety. Also, within each era, there are a multitude of places to explore, including icy mountains, deserts, underwater regions, city ruins, countryside villages, temples, and more. I found that there was very little repetition in my playthrough, and the distinct graphical characteristics of each era made it easy to know where you were. Let's now talk about the game mechanics. Like all good ARPGs, you start by picking a class. Actually, no, I lied. Before that, you have to choose whether to play online or offline. If you're feeling social, online characters allow you to play with others and trade loot, even though you can be almost social and opt for an online self-found character, so no trading allowed. Note that there is no PvP yet, but they are thinking to implement it at some point. On the other hand, if you want to be just a pure lone wolf, offline characters are for you, which are self-found by definition. And if you like to inflict more pain onto yourself, or as someone in total denial would say, if you like to challenge yourself, you can even choose to not have a shared stash between offline characters. Now let's talk classes. There are 5 base classes to choose from, each with their own unique flavor of ass-kicking. Each class has 3 masteries, and you will be asked to choose one at about 1/3 of the main campaign. even when I was about level 30. So what are the classes? You have the Mage, a classic. You can go Spellblade for elemental weapon fun and Lamplight substitute. Or you can specialize as Sorcerer for classic elemental mage goodness and general fireworks entertainment. Or you can become a Rune Master for, well, I don't know, because it's not in the game. We then have the Rogue, that can be a Marksman for that sweet ranged combat. Or she can be a Blade Dancer for up close and personal shin kicking. Or she can become a Falconer, a master of traps and birds of prey, but it's not in the game yet. The third class is the Primalist. You can become a Shaman for weather control on demand, I think. Or it can be a Druid, the unrivaled shapeshifter with peculiar dietary requirements. Or it can be a Beastmaster for when you want to run around with your own personal zoo of death. The best part of this class, all three masteries are available to play. Then we have the Acolyte, which is all about dark magic, and they have some seriously spooky options. You can choose to be a necromancer and hang out with the undead crowd. It's a quiet lot, it's true, but extremely faithful, and they always agree with you. Or you can be a Lich for some good old-fashioned life-sucking fun. Or you can become a Warlock if you like curses or cursing in general. Unfortunately, the Warlock isn't implemented yet, but you can start cursing already if you like. Finally, we have the Sentinel, the classic melee class. They can become Paladins, the holy warriors, with a side hustle of healing and buffing friends. Another option is the Void Knight, the dark version of the Paladin, I assume. And finally, we have the Force Guard, the classic tank, all muscles and no talk. I have nothing else to say. The gameplay you see is my Marksman in action. This is actually my second character. My very first one was a Necromancer, but I didn't plan it properly. I picked passives almost at random. In other words, I screwed up. So I rerolled, and so far it's going pretty well. I learned from my mistakes. Let's take a look at the skill tree. Or should I say skill trees.
Not happening.
Each class has a base passive tree, which may look familiar to Grim Dawn players. You start with 3 unlocked nodes, and each time you add a point, you move across the tree from left to right, unlocking more nodes and active skills. Each node typically allows you to allocate 1 or more points to make its effect more powerful. You can go as deep as you want in your base passive tree, depending on the build you want to create. To unlock the mastery tree, you must spend at least 20 points in your base passive tree and complete a specific quest. Once you've unlocked the mastery tree, you can add points to it, but you'll still have access to the other mastery trees as well, just not the full passives, only half of them. As you can see, I have most of my points in the Marksman tree, but I've also invested in the Blade Dancer tree. The complexity granted by this mechanism is quite wide, so I recommend using a build planner to better pick the nodes in the various trees and exploit their synergies. You can find a link to build planner in the description of this video. You have a maximum of 113 passive points to spend, which you obtain by leveling up and completing quests during the main campaign, and the maximum character level is 100. Let's talk about the active skills now. Active skills become available as you level up, and by assigning passive trees. Just to be clear, active skills are the abilities you use to do damage. Each class will unlock 7 skills by leveling up, and 2 or 3 by assigning points in their base skill tree. Additionally, the mastery tree will give you 1 signature skill. My Marksman, for example, has received a detonating arrow. Plus, you can unlock a maximum of 3 more skills. If that's not enough, then non-used masteries also allow you to unlock 2 or more skills from their passives. That's a lot of skills to choose from, but it all depends on where you allocate your 113 passive points. For example, my Marksman has unlocked 15 skills in total, but I can't use them all at the same time. You can only assign 5 skills, 1 to your mouse and 4 to your keyboard keys. This means making tough decisions, and that's not all. Each of the 5 skills you decide to use has its own skill tree. You have a maximum of 20 points to assign, which become available as you level up each skill independently. Each skill tree has quite a variety of choices, making it even more challenging. So, looking at my Marksman, I have a single target skill called Flurry, and I use detonating arrow for groups. Since both skill with dexterity, I picked passives that add dexterity, and that's why I went into the Blade Dance skill tree. Detonating arrow does lightning damage, while Flurry is physical damage, so I picked nodes that increase those stats. In addition, I have a Shift as a movement skill, and for this one I picked the ability that gives me 100% chance of throwing an acid flask both in the area I depart from and in the area I arrive in when I use the skill. This goes hand in hand and benefits from another skill that I have, which is called, unsurprisingly, Acid Flask, that I have leveled up to increase its area size, poison damage and penetration. Of course, my passive tree has nodes that increase my poison damage as well. Not to mention, I've picked up passives that grant me mana and health on hit, plus increased bow attack speed to quickly regain those resources when in dire need. I know, it becomes complex very quickly, and it's easy to lose track of the best choice to make. But after screwing up my Necromancer, it all became much clearer, and my second build is working much better. In fairness, I did play other action RPGs like Diablo 3, Torchlight 2, Path of Exile and Grim Dawn, so I have some previous knowledge to apply. A complete novice to the genre might be put off a little bit, but I think Last Epoch is quite accessible and more forgiving than some of the titles I mentioned. I'm sure that after 1 or 2 wrong builds, the third will be the good one, and things will start to click. If anything, in Last Epoch you can easily respec by spending gold, so you can make corrections without re-rolling completely. You can respec both the passive nodes and the active skills. However, once you have unlocked the mastery, you cannot remove points from your base class and go below 20. Regarding the active skills, you can remove points in 1 or more nodes and go in a different direction. Or you can outright respec out of the skill in its entirety and choose a different one. Overall, Last Epoch is a somewhat complex game with many choices and options available to the player, but it's also accessible and forgiving. It may seem overwhelming at first, but with some previous knowledge of the genre, or just a bit of trial and error, you can quickly get the hang of it and start building a character that can go far in the endgame. And with the ability to respec, you can always correct your mistakes and try new things forging system. As with most ARPGs, you will encounter various types of gear. Normal white items with no affixes. And by affixes I mean something like plus 1% increased attack speed, or plus 10 health, or any other stats. Then you have blue magic items with 1 or 2 affixes, yellow rare items with 3 or 4 affixes, and unique orange items with their own special affixes that can define your build. There are also purple exalted items that have 3 or 4 affixes like rare items, but they're the only ones that can have tier 6 or 7 affix values, meaning the highest stats tiers. Additionally, there are unique green set items that provide bonuses when you obtain 2 or 4 pieces of the set. And if you're feeling ambitious, there are red legendary items that can only be forged by combining a unique orange item marked with a label legendary potential and an exalted item. The resulting legendary will have all the unique affixes plus 1 or 2 of the exalted items for stats, depending on the unique's legendary potential. Now, forging is actually an essential system in Last Epoch. It's not only for legendaries. In fact, it allows you to augment the stats of lower level items and acquire extra power and defenses. Throughout the game, monsters drop also shards, glyphs and runes, all used for crafting. The best part is that all crafting materials are shared between characters of the same group, making the grind less painful, so you can get the most out of the game as you keep playing. When it comes to forging, you can open the forging menu at any time in the game, select the item and improve its affixes as long as the item has a forging potential greater than 0, provided you have the relevant shards. However, legendary forging is different and can only be done in a specific place that I wasn't able to unlock at this time. I know, lame. Anyway, shards improve the affixes already present on the item, but you can only improve them by adding values that belong to tiers from 1 to 5. Tier 6 and 7 values are reserved for exalted items. To clarify, exalted items roll with their tier 6 or 7 affixes already. You cannot forge tier 6 or 7 at all. Each time you forge, the forging potential of the item is consumed until it reaches 0, at which point you can't forge the item anymore. Unique items have 0 forging potential, so they come as they are, for obvious reasons. What do glyphs do? They affect the outcome of applying a shard or a rune, adding, for example, the chance of not using forging potential, or changing the affix you're upgrading into a random different one. Runes, on the other hand, behave a bit like the orbs in Path of Exile. You can add a random affix on an item if there is space for one more, or you can remove one of the affixes at random, just to give some examples. One final element to discuss in this gear section is the idols. These are extra items that you carry around, and they all have 2 affixes. They can't be forged, and most of them are class specific, but there are a few generic ones as well. Depending on the situation, you can use them to reach a resistance cap or add extra damage to a specific active skill. It's an interesting addition that gives more flexibility in completing your build, especially on the defensive side. At least, that's what I use them for on my rogue. Finally, let's talk campaign, but I recommend finishing it, since you're so close to the end anyway. The Monoliths of Faith are like islands, where an alternate version of Ithera history takes place. Inside each monolith, there are zones called echoes, which you visit to accomplish a task. Some examples of these tasks can be killing a boss, or closing a monster spawning gate, or surviving a number of monster waves. Each echo has a modifier that makes the run more challenging. It can add extra monster damage, increase their resistances or health, etc. Completing the echoes without dying earns you a specific predetermined reward, like a unique rare bow or sword, extra experience, gold, etc. There's more. Successfully completing the echoes also earns you timeline stability. As the stability grows, you unlock 3 quests, with the third being the boss of that timeline. Each timeline boss drops specific items, so it makes sense to farm a specific boss depending on your build or needs. Once you beat the boss, you restart your grind, so you can kill it again. In addition, each time you complete a timeline, you choose a blessing. These blessings are extra bonuses like increased XP per kill, or an increase to a specific stat, so on and so forth. As you move from one monolith to the other, monsters become more dangerous, meaning their level increases, reaching 100. But it's not all. Inside each monolith, you can and will encounter a corrupted echo that contains a corrupted boss. I recently faced one of these, and I have to say it was quite a hard fight. As you can see from the images, the corrupted boss is nasty and it's harder to beat than the regular bosses. The dynamics are somewhat complex and my build is a bit squishy, so I had to do a lot of running around and dodging. If you beat the boss, that timeline will become corrupted, increasing the monster's level, but also the quality of the loot you can find. Initially, the maximum corruption you can reach is 50 for normal timelines, but when you complete the last 3 monoliths, you unlock the empowered timelines, where all the monoliths have monster level of 100 and start with a corruption of 100 as well, with no maximum limit. In conclusion, for the power-hungry players who want to push their build to the limit, and then some more, this is your playground. Not enough for you, there's more. In addition to the monoliths, there are also dungeons, and currently there are 4 of them. These dungeons are separate from the monoliths and have their own rules. They are available way before the monoliths, but given their characteristics, they are an alternate endgame in my view. To enter a dungeon you need a key, which is part of the random loot, and each dungeon has an extra mechanic. For example, in the Sulfur Bastion dungeon, you gain a special shield that protects you from either fire or necrotic damage, but never both at the same time, so you have to switch from one to the other depending on the situation. The battles inside these dungeons become hectic very quickly, and really test your skills and build. One of these dungeons is a special one, the Temporal Sanctum, where you can forge legendaries. With a bit of shame, I have to say that I was able to reach the end boss of this dungeon, but I was one-shotted by its first ability. Unfortunately, the moment you leave the dungeon, dead or alive, you need another key to get back inside, and it resets, of course. Since I have only one key left, for now I've decided to get better gear and cap the resistances and try again later. In this moment I have no idea what happens when you beat the boss. impression is that if I need to go through the entire dungeon every time I want to forge a legendary, with the high risk of dying due to a simple mistake, maybe the whole process is not worth it. Or maybe it's like a virtue test. If you can beat the boss, you are worthy of the legendary you are about to forge. No idea. What I know is that the keys for this dungeon seem rare, as I've only dropped 2 of them so far. As I play more and possibly finish this dungeon, I will get a better idea on the legendary forging in and outs, or pros and cons, or whatever. I think I've covered most of the game mechanics. Overall, I have to say I'm really enjoying this game. It's complex, but not overly complicated, like some other games. I'm looking at you, Path of Exile. Anyway, as I was saying, I wouldn't consider Last Epoch complicated. But for those of you who love to min-max, there's still plenty of meat on the bone here. So thank you very much for watching till the end, and I hope you found this ASMR gaming session to be useful. Please let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see more videos like this one in